Yay! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Life Aligned Academy. I am super excited about today's guest. Martin and I go way back. I Facebook, Instagram stalked him. I was following him for a while. He was an authenticity coach, and I deeply admired the work that he does. So I reached out to him. This was probably going on like, what, a year and a half ago now, to be a guest speaker on my program, the Life Aligned Legacy Program. And he came on and he shared so beautifully. And so, yeah, we've done a little bit of work together. I'm so happy to have you here on today's topic. So welcome, Martin.
Welcome, and thank you for the invite. I've always admired your work as well, hence the reason that we worked together for a little while as well. And yeah, with everything that's been going on, and I was thinking, hey, maybe I would love to be a guest speaker at some podcasts, and all of a sudden you pop up with this, with then, everything around thriving, everything that I'm working about. So super, super exciting. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. And I know for you, you're in also quite a big transition space, moving from other types of community into starting your own, being more of a community builder. So this is why today's topic is all about the importance of community, especially in mental health. So both Martin and myself are coaches, and we're very passionate about mental health. And I think that this is such an interesting topic. So I wanted to kind of just open up and hand over to you and ask, when you think of community, what comes to mind? Like, what is your definition of community?
The definition of community is, of course, very, very broad. But when I would just let my thoughts flow, it's a place where people can really, first of all, explore who they truly are. Because like often we don't know, but where we feel safe to explore and become who we truly are and want to be. And then also a place where when we're dreaming, where we feel supported in our dreams, where people can support us, where we can support others a few steps behind us, where we have a group of people that are on a similar level as us. Like community for me is really just that you're a safe haven. Yeah, that if something is going very wrong, that people can help you, but also if something is going very right, that people are there to celebrate together with you and make that achievement even so much more valuable. And
I
those are the
love
first
that.
words. Yeah.
I love that. And like, I deeply resonate with that. And I think that, obviously everyone has different definitions of it. And that's why I ask, because, for whoever's watching this, wherever you are, and if this video is finding you, we often have these kind of communities that are given, right? So we have maybe our family structure, we have our societal structure. And I definitely notice with myself that different phases of my life, I kind of was surrounded by people that I felt, okay, these are like my friends, but I didn't feel like I could be, like what you say, sort of myself, like really. So there was that sense of I needed to mask. I would filter myself. I wasn't able to really just feel free, right? Or like you would feel a sense of maybe a judgment when you're being successful, that there was a criticism. I definitely noticed that, and maybe some people can relate. And I feel like this really redefining what community means is about being able to recognize, where is my safe space? Where do I get to really thrive and be myself, unfiltered, honest, real, and feel supported in both my highs and lows? And I think it's such an important thing to kind of question, that sometimes either we're on one side of the spectrum where we're like self-isolating, which we'll talk about in a minute, or we're surrounded by people but we feel really alone. So for you, what is your experience with community, or like, did you have a strong sense of community growing up? What is your relationship to community? Why is this so important to you?
It's actually, I think only over there, like since I've been becoming a coach. Before that, I lived in certain communities, like in very primitive communities in the middle of the forest, in many different ways. But it's only over the past 6 months to a year, who knows when what the awareness really started, but that I realized why that community is so important to me. And it's because as a child, like you say, you have those created communities, the given communities, like your family, your school network, and so on and so on. And when I was at school, I realized I actually never really had a real community, because the first school that I was on, I've always been very creative, very, with a lot of energy. And I was in a very, very traditional Belgian school system where my creativity was pushed down. My friends were all footballers and I was not, they were just interested in very different things than I was. And of course, it was adapting myself to have some kind of a sense of belonging, because that sense of belonging is one of our core needs as a human being.
100%.
And then
Yeah.
going through that, I shifted school. I found that a little bit more, but then I went traveling. And, now looking back, of course, I wasn't aware of that back then. All that I was looking for was a place to belong. And
Mm.
when I look back at it now, also my past years as a coach, I've been trying to find a place to belong as well. And that's, what Tristan talked about earlier. I'm shifting lots of things, because stepping more into that community building, because I feel like I still haven't truly found that place for myself. So I've said, instead of trying to look for it, I'm just going to create it. And that's where I'm in now. But it really comes because of that strong sense of belonging that I've been missing for a very, very big part of my life, and that I've become hyper aware of how important that is for my mental health, for my personal, professional growth, for, I think, every aspect of life. Is, if I don't feel like I belong, I'm going to start blaming, feeling guilty, feeling shame, feeling all of those things. So yeah,
Mm.
it's because of all of those experiences, and then becoming aware of the deeper meaning of those experiences, that now I feel like community is my core focus of everything that I want to do in life.
I so deeply, deeply resonate with that. And I think a lot of people can, right? Is that we've maybe been in situations like the schooling system or the community that we grew up in that, yeah, I mean, all the best people I know are a little bit quirky and a little bit weird and a little bit different, right? But it's hard to be that person in, yeah, a little bit of a square space, right? It's hard to be that person that is outside the box or thinks differently or acts differently or speaks differently in a space that, expects this. So yeah, I mean, I definitely resonate with that. I feel like a big reason for why it's important for me as well is that I just felt so lonely growing up.
Mm.
Spend a lot of time in my room by myself, trying to like regulate my own emotions. And yeah, I didn't really have very, very many people to kind of go to when I was going through a hard time, or just be like, wow, I feel like a total mess. I kind of felt like my survival strategy, we talk about being able to recognize what is that survival mode and how we can move into thriving is recognizing, well, what are we doing that's holding us in that survival mode? So for me, it was very much around needing to mask, to people please, to be palatable. I need to be a certain way in order to be lovable. I need to be sweet and kind and gentle in order to be accepted. And then what ends up happening is the relationships that you find yourself in aren't really aligned. That was my experience, is that you kind of find yourself in a situation feeling either really resentful, bitter, trapped, and wondering like why it's not working. Is this, and then we kind of internalize, oh, it must be me. Versus actually this, I'm a circle trying to fit myself into a square, as opposed to, yeah, finding all the other circles and making a different kind of a chain. So I love how you've used that to be able to see that this is actually one of your core missions, really, is to
Mm.
come back to the importance of community. We were chatting a little bit about the origins of that. Like, we are tribal beings as a human being, right? Like, our survival has been based on working together, collaboration, um, and I feel like our modern world has really moved us away from that. What are your thoughts and feelings about how we've kind of maybe lost touch in some ways, especially having stayed in some places where they are really connected to maybe the land or the roots, that they still contain that? How do you feel like in our, you're in Europe, I'm in South Africa. How do you feel like we've sort of lost touch with that sense of community?
I think the world that we live in today and the world that we used to live in, like often make refer to times like 3,000-4,000 years ago, but even 200 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, it was completely different, because we were dependent on each other. We were dependent on the farmer in town and the local, the local butcher, and we were dependent on our community. And today we just really aren't anymore. And like, I truly believe lots of our limitations, our mental, emotional, like lots of our fears date back to that time. Because when we really look at, now you say it yourself, we were tribal human beings. And when we really look back to that time where we were living in those tribes.
Thrives.
Exactly. And like, we had to make the tribe thrive. And that was the whole goal. That was the community goal. That was the common goal from every single person being there. Make our living situation within this tribe better. And we would work together to create that. What that would also create is, for example, a fear of standing out. Because imagine if you would be pushed out of that tribe, you would have to live in the wild, under the nature, with the wild animals. That's like almost 100% certain death. And when we bring that back to today, the biggest known fear to mankind is still the fear of being judged, the fear of standing on the
Rejection.
stage. Exactly. And all of that can be brought back to there. But there was a lot stronger community for people to support each other. And here, because the globalization, we don't need any, like, to survive, purely to survive. We don't even have to leave our house. We can order our food home. We can order literally everything to our doorstep. We don't need to talk to anyone, and we will survive. Will that make us happy? No, of course not. And that is then that fear of being judged, of being authentic, that all stems back from that time. And when we then really look at, I lost the question, to be honest, but when we really look at, when we really look at this today and the evolution that we made in that, we just stepped away from what is natural to us. And I believe, like, we talked about this briefly before, I believe like COVID really put a spotlight on that, because we were bound to our house. We couldn't go out, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, I feel alone. And but that is actually something they've been feeling, many of them have been feeling for a long time. But then there were much more distractions that they could go into, and they weren't available. And all of a sudden that feeling of being alone became so apparent that they couldn't avoid that anymore once COVID passed. And now that's why I see such a big shift as well in the world of trying to create community and find other people. And but a big part of that is, allowing yourself to show up as your authentic you. Because if you don't show up as you, how can someone ever meet the real you and support the real you and, love the real you? So, yeah.
Beautiful. I completely, just on your point with COVID, it is something I feel like we were all doing already. I mean, I've been working online for many years, right? And so people were kind of already doing that. But like you say, because there was this forced isolation of like, there is no real distraction, we kind of have to sit with that. And a reframe that always comes to mind when I think of being alone is all one, right? Is when we feel alone, it's the highlighting of the severance of source. It's kind of like the lonelier we feel this isolation. We've forgotten that we are actually all that is experiencing. I'm going metaphysical here now, but we're all that is experiencing all that it can be. And when we feel that aloneness, it is that real sense of that disconnect. Like, I don't remember my purpose, because community brings us back to a sense of purpose, of, like you said, this sort of greater aspiration. It's not just me and my individualism. It is me working for, like, my unique part, working for the collective, working for the whole, working for the good of all. And I feel like the more we've created that separation, fragmentation from the all, whatever you believe that to be, we become more insular, more isolated, and more lonely because we forget that sense of purpose. It's now just me hustling, trying to survive, and I forgot, like, whereas in the tribe, you'd have your healer, you'd have your farmer, you'd have all of these different components, and everybody's bringing their unique skill to collaborate. And so there is that intrinsic sense of purpose of like, I am here, I'm needed, right? I have the sense of belonging. And I feel like we really have lost that because, for a lot of people, maybe they're working at a job or a corporation or they're part of something. But if you're not buying into it, like if you don't believe in what you're doing, then you're kind of just going through the motions, right? You're just kind of like, I'm here, I'm a cog in this wheel, but I don't have that real like, yes, like I am contributing, I'm here for a reason. And one of the biggest causes of depression is a sense of purposelessness. It's like, well, what's the point? What's the point of all of this? Why am I here? Like we have that existential crisis of like, what is the point of all of this? It's because we've lost that sense of purpose. So I do, just on your point, like the community really offers us that sense of, hey, you are part of this thing and you're an important part of this thing and we need you. Without you, this whole picture wouldn't work. And yeah, just the way that it is right now, we don't really have that opportunity, I think, to remember that unless we're creating it.
Yeah, exactly. And like, ah, literally, I'm getting goosebumps through that whole area because it's so freaking aligned with everything that I'm about. Because I love that you brought the word purpose into this conversation as well. And like, his purpose and community are so connected because, well, ever since I started coaching, I started off with I want to help people find their vision and create their vision. What kind of, comes down to purpose as well. And now, like, having done what 2.5 years of work around this with dozens of people, what I realized, and I wrote a post about this roughly 2 weeks ago, is the purpose of every humankind is at the core the same. It's helping other people in their unique way. Someone is going to help someone build houses, someone is going to grow vegetables, but due to also globalization and stuff, we lost touch of how our specific thing is helping people. We lost that touch in human connection through that. And that's where I see like this, because I think it's undeniable that the online mental health service space is growing intensively. And I believe that that is because people are understanding, I actually really want to help people. I have this certain skill or this experience that I've had, or whatever it might be, that I believe can be of service of other people. And when they truly feel that sense of service, that is where the purpose starts to come in. And that's where people feel like they belong because they are, that they are part of the chain that is creating this beautiful world. And if you feel part of that chain, then you feel better in general. Like you say, you don't deal with the existential crisis of why I'm here, because you know why you're here. A lot less depression, like that. Yeah, I can go on
It
and
is.
on.
No. Well, let's go. Right. I think just to your point there, what you were saying earlier about that fear of rejection. Like where that stems from. Of if I show up with my uniqueness, that I'd be rejected. I think a lot of people shy away. I know for myself, like I was saying, that I kind of spent a lot of time by myself, especially the first, like really those fundamental years. And when I had a big emotion or something come up, I was like, well, you have to kind of deal with it. And I feel like I've definitely used that now. And that's part of my why, right? Of like, I want other people to not feel alone, right? And to not feel ashamed of their own human experience, because there are certain things that we kind of sign up for. And that's just part of being human. Our full spectrum of emotions, our fear of not being good enough, right? Like all of these things are not unique to the individual. They are part of the collective experience. And I feel like the more we kind of self isolate and pull back, the more we kind of feel like it's just a me thing, right? It's like, oh, it's just me feeling depressed, or it's just me feeling insecure or imposter syndrome, and actually the more I learn to accept these things as part of just being a human being, the more comfortable I feel to share with my own community. It gives permission for other people to do the same. And I think that, coming back to the authenticity point, it's a process. It's, like, it's quite a thing to learn to put yourself out there and, show up on social media and share it requires a lot of courage. What are some ways that you feel like, because I think it might be useful for whoever's watching, because this all sounds great in theory, but like, how do you feel you were able to recognize your purpose of like, hey, I'm actually here to help people, connect with their values and their why and their purpose, but you need to be able to stand up, right? You need to be able to stand up and step in. What made it easier for you to allow yourself to shine a little bit, and to be in the spotlight a little bit?
What allowed me to shine and to step in the spotlight? Definitely, like, also, even though, I praise, don't, what are the right words for this? I like, don't focus on the confirmation of others, the validation of others. It's still, validation, confirmation of others that can sometimes give you that actual little push that you need. That feeling of sense of enough. But then in the end, you're gonna have to just take action. And then taking action can start in a very small way. It doesn't have to be like, I don't know, like, go all the way to your biggest dream from 0 to 100. Like, imagine, and this is what I say to lots of my clients, imagine if you want to speak on a stage. Well, break it down for yourself and like, think about it. What is a smaller step for you? And like, if that feels too fearful, like, go smaller, go smaller. Even imagine if you want to speak on stage, but you have a fear of talking in front of people. Start with, go to the supermarket and ask someone the time. Go, and then the next step, once you feel more comfortable with that, go in town and have a random conversation, then speak in front of your family or friends, and like, slowly build up that confidence, because it's very difficult to do it from 0 to 100. And if you haven't had any confirmation that what you're doing is the right path, even like internally, confirmation emotionally that this feels right, it's very difficult to push through. Because like, also, when you say purpose, wanting to help people, yes, I still want to help people. That's the core of it. But when I really look at my purpose, it shifted from 2 years ago to now. And from 2 years ago, I want to help people find their vision and, love themselves more. And those are still things I want to do. But I became much more specific in, I want to help people feel like they belong. I want to help people connect with the right people that they feel supported and people that they can support. Because if you can support others, you automatically feel a lot better about yourself as well, because you have something to give. And, so those old parts are still there, but the purpose is something that for me keeps on moving.
Yeah.
But it starts with just taking action and figuring out what feels right. What is your unique way? What did you love to do when you were a 5-year-old child? Huh? And then start to implement those. But it's first lots of awareness work, and then
Yeah.
on top of that awareness
My
work,
go-to. Self-awareness, my favorite thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Becoming aware, and then you can take action.
I love that. That I love how you say the sort of purpose evolves. So I also got asked this question, because a lot of the work that we do, especially as coaches, is like finding clarity on the vision. Like, why am I here? What am like, that's a lot of the sort of core of the work. And someone once asked me, well, what's your purpose? And I was like, well, if I'm really honest, like, no bullshit, just like real honest, is like, I am here to live the most delicious, expansive life that I possibly can. And in doing so, I naturally become a lighthouse for other people to do the same. And, because there is this general sense of like, I want to be of service, like, and those are all true, right? Like, I want to be of service, I want to do these things. But like, if I'm really honest, like, I want to live the most epic life. And you can't do that alone, right? Like, because this idea, and I think especially in the self-development community, there is a rhetoric and a narrative around fulfilling all your own needs, and I'm definitely guilty of this, like in my early parts of the practices. Like, you have you have everything within you, which is true, but other people reflect and bring those things out. Like, the greatest work that I've experienced self-development wise has been in my intimate relationship and with my children. Greatest work, hands down. Like, out of all the courses, out of all the other things, hands down the greatest work I've done. Why? Because it's how I show up in relation. Everything is about the relationship. It's how I show up in relation to you. So yes, I might have, we're all that is experiencing it, all that it can be. So I have the allness within me. But how do I see that? How do I learn through? How do I move through that? Is in relationship to the other. So yeah, I think that being able to understand our unique purpose and how that then fits into the collective, because I think we kind of in life we generally pendulum swing to extreme. So it's either I'm overly social and I'm using my sociability as a distraction of like, I'm going out with my friends, I'm going to lots of parties because I don't want to be alone with myself. And that brings
Mhm.
up a lot of fear for people. Or it's, I'm in a bad space. I need to self isolate. That's definitely been my go-to, is when because I'm so like cheery and this is how I present to the world, that when I'm having a really hard time, my natural default would be to self isolate and to deal with it myself, or go off social media for a while and just like insulate. And I'm recognizing that it's so courageous to be able to show up more and more vulnerably, in that sense of like, wow, I'm actually having a really hard time. I'm struggling and I can ask for support, because I think we get a lot of mixed messages around that, support.
Yeah, because like this, for me, just to quickly throw it in there, was completely the opposite. My distraction was people. I would
Mm,
self isolation was never a thing for me. I was always people, 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 people. I, in my youth, I didn't spend a lot of time with myself. However, when you say acknowledging what you feel and stepping out of it, in relation with other people, because that's where you see how you react, how you respond. That's where you really start to experience what you've been saying, the full spectrum of human emotions. But and that's where the but is, to be able to do this, you
mm,
need people that you feel safe with, or at least to start learning this. Of course, like for me now, being further on this journey, I'll, in front of a group of strangers, I'll say that I feel sad or angry, or because I've been through a long journey and I learned to accept that not everyone is going to like me or like what I say, and that's fine.
and not
Because
everyone's cup of tea.
exactly, because I have my community that I know this is my cup of tea.
Mm,
Like, that's why it's so important, even if it's just one person that you feel safe with. If it's a best friend, even if it's your dog or your cat, if you don't have anyone, like, literally speak out what you feel.
mm,
And if a dog is, like I said, if a person is too much, start with a dog, start with yourself, speak it out loud, and then slowly let that grow. Because it's through that, when we talk about the authenticity, it's when you start to speak out your feelings that people start to connect with you. Because nobody connects with you really over, a football match, or like, that's all very nice and fun, but that's not where real deep connection happens. Deep connection happens on an emotional level. And to get to the emotional level, you need to talk about it, be honest about it, acknowledge it. And
mm,
that is like, once we learn to do that, we can start to claim back that community power that we've lost over the centuries, and can really take back that yeah, just the support, the all of it, the authenticity, the community, the waterfall of positive things that can come in life start with community, and, like you said, in relation to others.
mm. Oh, I love that. I actually shared on this topic on a podcast a little while ago about just sort of asking the listeners, what does safe actually feel like? Like you said, sometimes it really is just about, feeling safe with your dog. Like, let that be a starting point, because for most people, um, we don't feel safe, right? The messages that we've received as far back, we've done some inner child work together, and we've spoken a lot about it. And I think a lot of the fears that we have around community, around support, around intimacy, around vulnerability stem from how we experience that in those first fundamental years of life, right? And so if the message, like I received, the message I received, bless my mom, love her, she did the best that she could, was that my emotions were, there wasn't a space for them. And so she couldn't hold them. Therefore, the belief was that I need to hold myself. And that even when I need help, I won't be supported, right? That was the fundamental message for me. And other people, maybe they got a sense of safety being with friends, and then like not feeling safe to be alone with themselves and their own thoughts and their own emotions. So it's like this part of you that becomes either overdeveloped, like my independence, hyper independence became overly developed, which made it really hard to be in relationship because I, definitely with my husband, I've gone through so much of this process of being like, every healthy relationship is interdependent, right? We can't just be like, yeah, I'm completely independent, I don't need anything, because we all have these fundamental, and we've done a bit of work around this, those fundamental needs to be seen, to be heard, and to be accepted, right? To really feel that sense of acceptance of I can come as I am, and I'll be loved. But for most of us, those messages didn't land. And so obviously, what do, right? We reiterate the narrative of that is known. We go into the what's most familiar. So if self-isolating is safe, that's like for me, that was the safest thing, was I'm not going to be accepted. Go into my room, listen to some Linkin Park, and feel a little bit sorry for myself, write some intense poetry, come out smiley. But I never really got that feeling of what it feels like to feel safe in being supported. And that's been something I've had to actually actively seek those people of like, okay, so hey, I can actually be myself with you and you'll hold me. And that's created more and more and more safety. But like you said, it's sort of, you have to start, especially if you've gotten very negative messages about community support, vulnerability. Like I know for a lot of people, their vulnerability has been weaponized. As children, like when you're vulnerable or you share how you feel and then you get a hiding or you get reprimanded, that's the message you receive, is that it's not safe to be that way. So obviously we carry that into adulthood, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and like, because I actually went to Tristin after we, initially after I was a guest speaker there, because I noticed that I was missing a big part of my coaching, what was working around inner child. So I started working with Tristin to learn a lot more about that as well, and dive deeper into myself and those parts of me. And of course, after that, it didn't stop. I went researching and learning on my own and reading books and listening books, and yeah, everything comes down to that safety. I feel whether it's in community alone, every limitation of us comes down to a certain kind of insecurity or a certain fear, whether it's rejection, like whatever it may be. And the only real solution, direct solution for insecurity or fear is safety. Going back to that safety.
Yeah,
And
survival mode, safety, right? Like the essential, something is chasing me. The antidote, the antithesis is feeling safe.
exactly, 100%. And then of course the journey starts. Like, how do you help people feel safe? Well, there's obviously all the deeper work, but like a very simple tool. What amazed me with how good it worked was very simply because fear. An acronym, how does it go? Fear, false evidence appearing real.
Feeling
Most
real. Yeah.
fears are created in our mind. So if we step away from that super emotional feeling and we try and think a little bit more rationally, by just what I do, I put my hands on my heart and like I feel grateful because I feel my heart beating. No matter how I feel, my heart is beating there for me. And just ask myself, am I safe in this moment? Instead of focusing on everything else, no, am I safe in this moment? Is there anything in my reality right now that is actually endangering me? Am I just truly asking myself that question? Like it became so much easier to find my breath again and to step deeper into that safety. And then also, when we talk about sharing our emotions in front of other people, it's also like, am I safe in this moment? well, to be honest, these are all people that I love and enjoy, and I know they're not going to judge me. So am I safe? Yes, I am safe. And even though there might still be a little bit of that fear, because that's something we lived with for so long, you coming to that realization of I am safe, like rationally, I know that I am safe. That step of actually sharing becomes so much easier. And then, yeah, and then, of course, by doing it more and seeing that it's well taken,
New
you can grow
evidence.
your comfort. Yeah, exactly. And then, once the door is open, it's like, wow, I can speak about how I feel. This is amazing.
I love that. I love that. And I see so many people that go, maybe even a whole lifetime of holding everything in, kind of just putting the lid on stuff and not really wanting to share and trying to make themselves, you know, like pleasing enough for those people. And I don't know, I think the greatest sense of liberation is when you recognize in this moment I am safe to show up as I am. And if it ruffles somebody's feathers, because also I think it's important to recognize that, and I learned this lesson, like I was sharing with you earlier, I learned this lesson in a really visceral and hard way, that so often we're afraid to tell somebody else our truth because we're scared of losing the relationship. And I I stand by this now more than ever. Like the more honest we become with ourselves, the more honest we are with those people, you really test that dynamic, right? Because if it is not for you, then your truth um, won't be held there. But we tend to internalize that, right? We're like, well, if this person, if the relationship fails or this job fails, or then I'm a failure. Versus actually, if I'm really honest about the situation and I say that and I speak it obviously in the most integrous, kind way, that it naturally starts to change for the highest and the best outcome. And that's really hard to believe if you don't have any evidence for it, right? If every other time you've spoken out and it's blown up in your face, it's very hard to be like, but recognizing that if it is blowing up, it's blowing up to make space for something that is more aligned. Like I've had a lot of friendships end because of difference in opinion, and it's like, well, actually I really value um growth, and growth is being able to have this difference of opinion, letting them collide and making something new from that. So if someone can't really hold my perspective or even go into a little bit of a robust debate, that isn't my safe person, and it's in a way we kind of creating a natural organic filter. But I feel like the reason we don't is because we're afraid of that inevitable, what is not for us, like we've probably all experienced relationships ending, but then it kind of becomes this explosive thing because we've let it build to the point of resentment, even hatred maybe, versus, wow, this isn't working for me, I need something to change.
Yeah, like first, like what you just said, really brought back something that I read somewhere. I can't remember. It's been a long time, but it's very easy to figure out if someone is looking for the truth or someone to just validate their own opinion. Just share something that they disagree with, and are they going to ask why you believe that, or are they just going to go straight in defense? And then you'll know. Of course, there might be
Mm.
more reasons behind it. But like on everything that you said, I'd love to potentially share, not potentially, I'd love to share a personal anecdote from me and my girlfriend. Like we've been together for a good 6 months now, but I've definitely haven't, like, on my own conscious choice, I've not taken the easy road of just letting it be a loving relationship. And just, no, I've went straight into the deep, hard questions with her because I don't really want to waste time in another fling for 2 or 3 months. Just like, I'm going to do this right from the start. And she has a very anxious attachment style. Yeah, I don't know who's going to listen, so I'm not going to dive into her past too much, but she's a very anxious attachment style. So there's fears popping up everywhere. And I know that, of course, I'm very aware of those things due to the work that I do. So I noticed myself being very careful about what I say and how I say it, and sometimes not sharing what I truly feel to keep her safe. Um, that would also mean that sometimes I would reject my own emotions and my own feelings in order to keep her safe, in order to please, in order to not be rejected, in order to not be hurt by her reaction. And I think these are things that everyone has in their relationship. And I'm someone very active. She's someone that likes to relax and chill. So we balance each other out in that a lot. In my past relationship, I've gotten stuck on an image of what the relationship could have been.
The
So
should.
now, exactly. So now I have this fear of sitting in a relationship where I'm stuck to the image of what it should have, could have been, and not to what the reality of it is. And we have made plans, like everyone in any relationship. Hey, we'd love to do this, and the summer has been very hectic, and we just haven't been able to do a lot of them. Not because we didn't want to, just because life happens. And then I come up with these conversations. Hey, I want to do more. I want to do more, to motivate that more. But what is deeper down on a deeper level is actually just, I want to do more because I'm afraid that we're going to get into a relationship that is not how I have in my head what it should be. But I didn't, because that fear of not being good enough from her side, I didn't allow myself to say that, to even acknowledge it to myself, because I didn't want to make her feel that way. But then at some point I said to her, hey Verena, like, I have a fear that I would love to talk about. And I shared this with her, and of course she jumps in her defenses, because that's what she's been doing her whole life. We're working on it. She's doing a lot better already. She jumped straight into those defenses, like really hard on. Like, obviously I was in a very vulnerable state in that moment, so I didn't react on that in the best way either. But then we got to a point of like, okay, we realized that this was not a healthy conversation. I said to her, just go outside, like, take 5 minutes and come back in whenever you're ready. And then she did that. She came back. The first thing that she said, and that is the beauty of speaking up, the first thing that she said, I'm so sorry, because you very vulnerably shared something that you are afraid about. And I fully jumped into my own fears. And I didn't need to hear anything else than that.
Yeah.
Like, just her acknowledging me. But I could only have her acknowledging my fear if I openly shared that. And then, of course, on the back of that, there was a whole different energy. And then we went looking for solutions to facilitate that safe space for both of our fears.
Mm.
But all of that could only happen once I acknowledged it to myself and to her. Before that, like you said, I could have kept this hidden for another year, probably, easy. But at some point, that would have exploded. And then, the self-fulfilling prophecy of, I don't want to break this relationship, is going to make, is going to end up in breaking a relationship.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's sometimes so important to hear other people's, because I'm sure so many, I know I can relate deeply to what you just said there. And a lot of times it's just that fear of me speaking up, and the way that it will be received, right? Because of the messages that we received before. And we all, if we kind of come back to base level, is we all have very similar fears, right? Is that I'm afraid of rejection. You're afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of wasting my time in another. You're afraid. Okay, cool. So we have this baseline, and I feel like what happens when we shy away from those, that difficult yet beautiful transformative conversation, like you've just shared there, is we really lose that opportunity for true intimacy. Because it's that true, for me, true intimacy is the ability to kind of just bare your soul fully, regardless of how that person responds, right? Because we tend to fear the response versus, I'm going to say this in the most, and I think this is an important thing, because I hear a lot of like, I just need to speak my truth. And it's like, yeah, okay, but like, you're mindful of your partner's attachment style and wounds. So you're going to be mindful in the delivery. And I think that comes with the self-awareness. It's kind of like, I could just blurt out my truth to you and end up re-traumatizing you. But with the self-awareness, it's about this is how I'm feeling. This is the truth of my experience. I need to say it, but I'm still going to say it in the most kind and loving, intentional way possible, but I'm not responsible for how the other person receives me. What I'm responsible for is to show up as honestly and truthfully as possible. And I find that more and more, again, I do a lot of couples coaching and I see this so often, is that when you have that moment, like you experienced, like you shared, the intimacy is a whole new ball game, right? Because we've now kind of cut the bullshit and dropped the mask and dropped the facade, and we're here together, really together. And that's where we really, I don't know, I feel like the soul really gets to play and explore when we drop all of that other stuff. And, kind of bringing this relationship dynamic back into this idea of community is the more we recognize that we don't have to be ashamed. Shame is such a tricky, sticky little emotion because it only exists. Brene Brown speaks so beautifully on this topic of shame only exists when it's hidden, right? In the darkness, in those corners of our mind where we keep rejecting it and keep shaming it and keep pushing it into the corner. And when we do this, this is actually what creates a lot of toxicity in relationship dynamics, but also in our culture, in war, in all of these things that we're seeing in our world right now, is this deep shame of what it means to be human, right? That really icky, like all this vindication of my belief is the only way, that defense, right? It's like, this is the truth. And it's like, well, it's my truth. I want to hear your truth. And then we can reconcile and create a new thing. And I feel like the more we're able to get comfortable with this on an individual level, we are, yeah, kind of adding to that collective. We're seeing sort of the Israel Palestine whole situation, war in our face right now. And I see a lot of people like taking sides and like, this is right and this is wrong. And for me, definitely the process or the path that I've been taking with it is recognizing where in myself am I in massive conflict? Because as we said in the beginning, I am an individual part of the collective. And as I do my individual work, remembering, coming home to the whole, I'm adding that purpose back to the collective. I'm like the puzzle piece in that. And looking at where in myself am I being stubborn? Where in myself am I being defensive? Where in myself am I being at war, in conflict with these different shadowy parts of myself? And how can I reconcile, right? Like bring back together. And it really starts, number one, like you said, the self-awareness. And number two, a big one is radical loving honesty. That ability to be like, I am gonna just be honest because it's the kind, like if I really love my partner, the most loving thing that I can do is to be honest with them. It's not loving to bullshit. It's not loving to hide what we're really feeling because you'll feel that. Like, when couples feel like, oh, I just don't feel as connected. What's creating and severing that connection is all the filter, all the mask, all the unsaid stuff.
Again, like this brought up something in my mind that we haven't talked about. Yeah, we'll see how deep we go into that because that's a whole other conversation. What very much ties into relationships, and obviously relationships are community. So that you can't sever those two. This communication, like everything comes down to good communication. And I really believe that we as human beings, the general human being, just can't communicate anymore. We don't know how to. We're not taught how to communicate properly. We never learned how we speak up about our emotions. People don't teach us, how do I actively listen to a person? How do I make someone feel heard when they're sharing something? And like what triggered this within me is when you said, this is my truth and I want to hear your truth. And I believe like that's where a lot goes wrong within communities, because I've lived in 3 active physical communities, and most of the problems that are going on there isn't communication. I want something, whether it's something emotionally, something physically, or something built in the community. I want something, and you know, put these on. And what other people want, yes, it's okay that you want this, but I want that. and that's where, if you learn to communicate, I want this, what do you want? Okay, you want that, how can we meet in the middle?
Win-win. Yeah.
Yeah. And in relationships and community, very often, like, also how our community sometimes splits in two. There's a problem, and all of a sudden there's going to be the problem in the middle, one here, like one person here and the other person there, and you're fighting with each other. But the problem actually isn't even important anymore. The important thing in that moment is who wins.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a battle. That's essentially, I mean, that's essentially it. It's like,
Yeah,
you have to lose in order for me to win, as
exactly.
opposed to any collaboration is about being able to cooperate, to communicate, right? Is so for a community to be able to move into that thriving, whether the community be your family, nuclear family, whether it be your larger community, whether it be a relationship, whether it be with all the aspects of yourselves, right? Is about being able to figure out those needs. I think, like you're saying with the communication, a lot of that breakdown comes from us um, thinking that other people are mind readers. Like
Yeah.
I hear a lot in couples coaching. It's like, but he should just know. Like, like how does he not know that I need more affection? Well, he doesn't know, babe, because you didn't tell him. Because he's not a mind reader. We're not mind readers, and I think a lot of times it's either because we're looking through life through our own lens. And so my sort of unconscious bias is like, this is the way that the world is, right? It's this way. And if you knock up against that and you're like, oh no, no, but it's this way. Now we're in conflict because it's my perspective versus your perspective, as opposed to like, have you seen that little meme where I think it's like a glass in the shadow, there's light shining from either side, and it shows complete, like the one shows a square and the other one shows a different shape. It's the same object, but creating two different, and they're both true. It's this and it's that.
Yeah.
It's this and that, right? And I think the more we can realize that and come back into the sense of, you're right, I'm right, your truth is right, my truth is valid, how can we work together to create harmony, right? How can we work together to find resolution? How can we work together to both win? Because my win isn't a win if you're losing. And that's, I think, through my own work has been a huge thing. I don't want to win if you're like, do you know what I mean?
Because
Yeah.
that's exactly where it ties into community as well. Because if someone is winning and someone is losing, it's not community. Then you go back to that individualism, what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And it's, you want to have that, you want to make it that way that the community wins.
Yeah.
Not your personal win. And that's where, when you take that table example, something that I always say is that put yourself next to each other in front of the table and look at the problem together.
Yes,
You know,
yeah, we do this in couples coaching. So I'll get them to discuss the problem, but we literally like create the problem as a middle thing, like a thing. And when we talk about it, because most people it's like, but you da da da, and we're talking at each other as if you're the problem. But when we're able to go like, hey, here's a problem. Here's a problem over here. Boom, let's pop it over here. Let's work together on solving this thing. Now we're not enemies, right? Because I think especially one of the biggest breakdowns there is because we don't agree, I'm on some level feeling rejected. I'm feeling misunderstood. I'm feeling disconnected. Whereas it's not a personal thing. You're allowed to have a difference in opinion. And actually, it broadens my perspective, right? If I can actually
definitely.
integrate and take yours on, I've grown. I've grown as a person.
And that is exactly the importance of community in mental health. Yeah. Having people around you that don't take you for granted, that really hear you out, that want to work together with you, that even if they have a different opinion, that they want to hear your opinion and then create something better out of it, grow through that. And because of that, you're going to feel that your world matters, your thoughts matter, your opinion matters. And the fact that you feel I matter, I belong, I'm enough, I'm worthy, is like,
That's it.
you
That's
already, yeah.
it.
You know? If you can come to that point, your mental health is at a good stage already. Like, you're way above average. If you can say from yourself out loud, I am worthy and I belong. And that is the power of community, because that is like, there's nothing that is more influential, obviously, in the feeling of belonging than community.
100%. I heard this thing the other day, we hear a lot about self-love, right? Or self-care, 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 self-care. And again, it's that individual. And I heard this thing about, especially with mental health, it's also about community care, right?
Yeah.
It's about
Yes.
recognizing that my self-care is also community care. So, I definitely find like the more I'm able to do for others, like we were saying earlier, is it gives me a greater sense of purpose, of I am important. Like if I wasn't here and not doing this particular work, there'd be like a gap in the symphony of this one song that is the universe, right? Like, but that is the ultimate self-development, I feel, is coming home to that realization that we are
Yeah.
enough, that we do belong, and that we matter as we are. Your voice, your presence, your fingerprint, your uniqueness, everything you bring to any conversation, to any situation matters and is important.
Yeah.
And the biggest crux of mental health is not having one of those things, right?
Exactly. And like for me, a big thing, because like I said at the beginning, I'm working on building a new community. This is now going to be an entrepreneurial community, because that's what I feel like I'm missing. So I want to create that for myself. And something I want to add into that to really play into this specific thing, what you just said, is everyone has 2 hours that they can free up a week.
Mm,
2 hours. So in the community I'm creating, I want every single person to spend 2 hours a week on someone else's project, because
that.
that creates such a big sense of community, because you can help others, you get to know them on a different level, you get to know their way of thinking because you're going to work on their project, and in return you get so much support back for spending 2 hours a week. And
Mm,
like that value of getting back, of course, as well, but also just the giving and understanding, and people seeing your value, and you going to be recognized for the help that you do. And there's so much recognition and that community care that happens when you do that, that I'm
mm.
like, because my ultimate goal is I want to create communities around the world. I want to build my own community, but that is a very special project that is somewhere in the future. But all these ideas, that like the word community care, I've never heard it that way, but it is definitely something I'm taking with me, because it really encompasses every, like, so much of what is missing in many communities that I've been in. People, because people are there because they want something,
Their
but what.
agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like, if I really see, if there's communities that really think about what do we want as a community, things really start to flow.
I love that so much. I mean, it's the pay it forward principle, right? Is when we do something like just the smallest kind of act of like letting someone in front of us in the queue because they have more stuff. The universe is responding. Life is responding to those things, and I feel like what also traps us in this individualism in survival mode is this me. I have to take. I have to take as much as I like for me, and it really does create this little insular world of it's me against the other. It's always me against the other. And I feel like these little gestures about, just kind of how can I contribute? Like, how can I help you on your project? This YouTube channel has been something like that, a little passion project of mine as well. It's just a way to be able to give back and
Yeah,
to share and to connect. And um, I think that is such an important thing to do, to have those projects that are really selfless. But remember, the self is part of the whole. So as I give selflessly, because I think there's a lot of misconception around that. It's like me being selfless means being walked all over or being a people pleaser. And I think we want to just like flip the script on that. And it's really about I recognize that it does benefit me, right? Me being kind, I feel great when I smile at someone. Like it does give me something back, right?
yeah.
Hmm.
It's from a Vishen Lakiani from Mind Valley. You probably know
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I've been reading his book, Buddha and the Badass, and it's one of the things that he does in there. What I started to just do in daily life. If he helps businesses to become a more healthy business, and but not health business wise, like where people love to work. One of the things he does is he says to everyone that I can't remember how much it was, but to send one positive email a week or a day. Can't remember what he says in the book, but this is something that I started doing in my own life. Like, give at least one person a day, like a very honest compliment. And once I started doing that, because it's something very easy, and this is, if you want another tool to how to build your community, start doing this. Like just one person a day. It doesn't have to take more than a minute. Like giving a compliment for a minute is already a long compliment. It can literally be 10 seconds. And by starting to do that, I'm starting to feel so much joy from doing that. And now I notice it's my new normal. I say thank you for like things that, yeah, my girlfriend is amazed by. Like she's never been seen that much, but just because I say, hey, thank you for doing this, thank you for doing that. But then also, if I had a good call with my dad and the end of the call, I'm like, hey dad, like I really appreciate you. Thank you for this conversation. Like I really took a lot out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not more than that, but that person feels really seen and heard in that moment. And that will, even if it's not through him, that will come back, and that is the power of community. So
Mm, mm. I love this, and I mean the ultimate thing to build, like we were talking about earlier about intimacy is rapport building, and what better way to do that is to create that sense of like I see you. That's what creates connection, is feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling accepted. So in any small way, and I think yeah, maybe we can just sort of close with some of the tools and just kind of round that up. But for me, it's definitely that ability to recognize the other person, to allow, and it's again, it's an inside out approach. The safer I feel to show up as I am, as authentically as I am, recognizing I'm filtering out whoever is, I'm not their cup of tea. They like coffee, I like tea. That's great. Good on them. There's no judgment there. The more comfortable we can become in that, you automatically become a safe person for somebody else. And I think that's an important recognition, right? Is as we do this thing for ourselves, we become, like you said, you that guide for someone who's maybe 5 steps behind on the journey, right? Is like the safer you are, maybe you're not 100% secure in who and what you are, but to that person, they're looking up and they're going like, wow, this is safety. I feel safe being seen, like with the compliments, like I see you, I recognize you, I'm grateful for your presence in my life. Like that is touching beyond food, beyond shelter, like our real core needs. And a lot of what I talk about is the difference between the survival needs and thrival needs. To thrive, we're needing to meet not only those basic survival needs, but the seen, heard, and accepted unconditionally. So the more we can start to do this for others without that expectation of it, being returned, it will be inevitably returned when we start to do it. Maybe it's just yourself in the mirror of like, hey, you're doing good. Like 10 points for you. Or that tool that I taught you about finding a photograph of the little
yeah.
and starting a conversation with that little person and giving them the validation, giving them, it's hard to maybe give yourself that compliment, but little 6-year-old you with those bright, shiny eyes to be able to be like, we've got this, that these are really important ways to start to build that internal sense of safety and community. What do you feel are some, just to kind of highlight what we've been talking about here, some important tools that the listeners can take away?
So there were some tools shared, but I feel like maybe the very obvious, or what I've been noticing, people that don't have a community, or that feel that don't have a community, that feel that don't have any deep connections. Of course, that validation, all of those things. And very often the question is like, where do I find these people? Well, think of what your interests are. Whether if it's a yoga, maybe you already go to a yoga class, or maybe you already do some kind of personal training. You go to the gym, or you go to drawing classes or pottery, whatever it may be. in that class, those people have similar interests as you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the same class. But you might have just not been able to make that step from, okay, there's this one similar interest, of taking that step further, of building a deeper connection. And this is where, for example, doing that compliment thing can come in very, very handy. Because if you just, at the end of it, the beginning, or wherever in whatever you're doing, you give someone like a sincere compliment, and that's an important thing. Not just throw out, hey, you have a beautiful trouser. No, give that person like a sincere compliment. And if that person receives it, that will instantly create at least a good conversation. And then from that good conversation, more can flow. I'll be like, the most difficult part in creating a good community is instigating the conversations that you want to have. Because it's very easy to have a platonic conversation with someone. But to go a little deeper, well, give a sincere compliment. I like, can literally be, I really loved how you supported that person in this certain thing. I really appreciated your motivational words. It's inspiring to me to see you showing up every week, even though X, Y, and Z is going on in your life. Try and give a compliment that is just a little layer deeper than superficial, and all of a sudden the conversation will completely change.
I love that so much, and something that I've practiced for quite a long time now, and I think it can be a nice in conjunction to what you're saying, is asking deeper questions. So like one of my favorite things to do is kind of going up to a stranger and like asking them something off the bat, like quite like, what's your passion? Like, what gets you up in the morning? Like, what do you love? Right. And it's interesting because you'll be met first with that little bit of like a discomfort of like, oh, I'm used to being asked about the weather, not like some. But again, it's just the more comfortable you feel with that, of like whether the person answers you or doesn't answer you, it's not a reflection on your self-worth, right? It's just, I'm here, I'm wanting to engage, I'm wanting to find deeper connections, more, less just surface level stuff. I want to kind of go deep. Like you said, you're not going to beat around the bush in this relationship. You're going to ask the hard questions, because that way you're truly evaluating whether it's aligned for you. And what better way to know that is by asking deep questions. I think that's a nice little collaboration there of this real sincere, genuine compliments and getting curious about questions. And another point to what you said, I think that is such great advice about looking at where you are already plugging in and your interests and your hobbies. So especially with like our quirky sides, like maybe I've just started jiu-jitsu, and my husband had been doing it for a long time, and I always looked at it and I was like, but it's like so aggressive and it's like sweaty, and when I really started to look at what am I wanting more of? I'm wanting more discipline. I'm wanting more sort of structure to processes. And there's a community waiting for me to tap in, and I'm keeping myself the outsider. I'm looking in going, only you can play. You can play. I can't. I have to be here because that was my default setting. And it's just been so amazing. It's only, it's been a couple, like maybe a month or so, but I'm loving being part of that community and seeing, that self-discipline, seeing the respect that you have for your limits and other people's bodies, because you're really it's like a very intimate sport. Like you really are like right up in the person's space, and to be able to be there in a way that feels like it's mutually beneficial for us to be here in the space together. I'm respecting your boundaries and your limits. These are mine, and knowing my own limits, it's given me a whole new perspective on kind of the mental, emotional aspect, and now giving it like that physical. So I think also looking at interests that maybe you've been curious about, that you've been too maybe scared to step into, go for a class. Just go, like, put yourself out in a space that, yeah, you're super curious about. You might find that
To
there's a
very
whole
briefly
community.
touch in there, if I may.
Yeah.
Like Tristan said, just go to a class. You don't have to sign up for a year. No, just go to one
Test it
class.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like you were talking about those small actions earlier. Just taking one small action, one tiny little action could be, like think about where you met your partner, right? I'm sure everybody has a story like this. It's I met my partner in a smoky bar that I didn't want to be in. I was forced to go. But that synchronicity, me actually going into that environment that I really didn't want to be, I didn't really want to be there. I went there and my life changed. And I'm sure we all have those moments of true deep connection that came in these really curious places, these unexpected places. And if we're not sort of allowing ourselves to step into the unknown a little bit, we're going to keep getting the same kinds of people, the same kind of community, the same kind of feeling. Oh, I don't feel supported. I feel so criticized. I feel so judged in these relationships. We gotta step beyond that a little bit into the unknown. Is there anything else on this that you feel is important to sort of land or share or just sort of sum up?
Tristin, I think we can talk another
Talk about
2
it forever.
hours.
Yeah, I agree.
Something, find your community, and if you can't find it, look for help. Because
Mm,
community is like, after everything that I've done, the one key thing that I come back down to, community is key. If you want a healthy mental health, if you want personal growth, if you want professional growth, community is key. Like, I've never seen one person grow exponentially without having the right people to support them. I just haven't. And if they
mm,
did, then they fall back off that horse fairly quickly, because old habits kick back in and community wasn't there to push them back up.
mm.
So,
I think that's such an important point as well. It's like that quote of "We are the sum total of the five people we hang around with most."
100%.
And I think that's an important thing to kind of just start to get really honest and or curious and honest with yourself of those five people. How do I feel around those people? Right? Like, do I feel criticized? Do I feel judged? Do I feel not safe? Do I feel like we only gossip? Or like I made a rule like I won't gossip, I won't partake in that. And it's amazing what shifted. My whole community shifted when I started saying no to that. Like I'm not going to partake. I don't want to belittle or judge somebody. I don't want to partake. The community shifts. My engagement shifts. So on that, if people want to join your community and feel supported, if you have listened to Martin's message today and just really resonated with his vibe, where can people connect with you? Where can people find you?
Well, like I said, everything is new and building phase because I split it with my business partner. But like in the link on my Instagram, like the name is here at underscore Martijn IJN Smeets. And the link there, you can find a way to
I'll
sign up
post
to
the
get in
link
the
as well here.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an online co-working space where I want to facilitate all of this for solopreneurs, entrepreneurs that want more real human connection in the entrepreneurial world. A Facebook group will be coming and stuff, but like if you want to be in touch with all of this that I'm creating, just follow my Instagram or add me on Facebook, and you'll be updated well enough over there.
Well, I think it's such important work that you're doing. And I know I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years now, and I know how important it is to feel that sense of community and support. It's a tough, it's a tough journey. So we don't want to go it alone. So
Yeah.
thank you everybody for watching. Yeah, I'll post some links in the description below. Do like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this content. There's so much more to come. I on this channel provide all the tools for becoming a thriving human being. And I will definitely, yeah, I'm sure there's many more conversations that you and I can have together. So definitely want to have you back on. And thank you so much for your time and your energy and your beautiful wisdom. Thank you so much for showing up today.
Well, thank you too. I love this conversation. I love to reconnect, and I'm already looking forward to being on here the next time.
Yay. Thank you so much for watching and catch you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you. Ciao, ciao.